Pastor Doug here from Crossroads. It's great to be with you. I hope that today's message will draw you closer to Jesus.
What do you think of when you think of powerful, impactful words? What do you think of? Maybe it's an incredible speech. Like, for instance, one of the more famous speeches in American history, I Have a Dream, from Martin Luther King. Or how about this one from 1987 at the Brandenburg Gate? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Or perhaps the greatest presidential speech in history. We are going to live on. We are going to survive. This is our Independence Day. I wasn't here last week, so I had to get an Independence Day joke in there. Or maybe you're thinking about something personal. Maybe you're thinking about something personal. I mean, how many times, how many of you have read a Stephen King book too late at night? I'll tell you, that'll put a fright in you. And it's just words, but it can scare you beyond something that even most movies can. Or maybe for you, it was a song. The lyrics of a song became so impactful that they became an anthem for your life in a particular season. We all kind of know that words have impact, don't we? They can stir us, they can motivate us, they can inspire us, they can anger us, they can scare us, and they can change our outlook. But when we think of the power of words, and when we come up with what we associate with powerful, impactful words, so many times we think of things like this. We think of great speeches or powerful people, successful authors, amazing movies, or important moments. But what if words don't just have impact when they come from powerful, important people, but when they come from you and I? What if words have power not just in significant moments, but in everyday life? What if the words we actually use have the power to shape our life and to shape the lives of those around us? Well, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. All this summer, we are spending time in the book of Proverbs. And for the next 2 weeks, we are going to be talking about the power of our words and how they impact our lives. And Proverbs has quite a bit to say about the use of our tongues and our words. So let's look at a first proverb here. And this proverb is kind of going to be the anchor for us. It's going to be the focal point of what we talk about here. So let's look at it. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it eat of its fruit. The tongue, your tongue, my tongue, has the power of life and death. Now, come on. I mean, he has to be exaggerating here. This has to be an overstatement to make a point, right? Like when Bill Shankly, the former Liverpool coach, had this to say about soccer or football. Some people think football is a matter of life and death. I assure you, it is much more serious than that. It has to be like this, right? It has to be just an exaggeration to make a point. But what if it isn't? What if it is an exaggeration? Last spring, summer, we had a temporary admin while we were looking to hire. And her name was Irene, and she did a great job for us. But one day I was in the office, and I observed her talking to the office plants. She was walking around, watering them, talking to the office plants. I'm like, okay, all right. I've never seen this before. I asked her what's going on. She's like, oh, I always encourage the plants. It helps them grow. And I'm like, does it though? Does it? So this was enough that I had to look this up. And I came across IKEA experiment. In lead up to an IKEA anti-bullying campaign, IKEA did this experiment where they had kids and they gave them 2 plants. One of the plants, they would just spend the next 30 days bullying this plant. They were supposed to insult it, talk negatively to it. And the other plant, they were supposed to encourage it, say nice things, say positive things to it. And at the end of the 30 days, what they found is the bullied plant was wilted and withered, and the encouraged plant thrived. Now, I mean, this is hardly a scientific experiment. I mean, IKEA is not exactly a plant place, but I did a little bit more research, and maybe that's kind of what the science kind of says on us. Maybe there's something to it, but maybe there is. Maybe there is more than mere exaggeration when Proverbs talks about our tongues having life and death. But why would our words carry so much power? Where does that power even come from? Now, in order for us to kind of properly understand where this is coming from, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to understand something important, something fundamental about how God created the universe, about how God created us, and the nature with which we have been created. So we're going to take it the whole way back to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis 1:3 says this, "And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Genesis 1:6, "And God said, 'Let there be a vault between the water to separate water from water.'" Over and over again in the first chapter of Genesis, as God's creating the world, it says, God said. God said. God spoke the universe into existence. God's words created the universe. The words of God carry with them the power of creation. Later in Genesis 1:26, "And God said, 'Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness.'" God made us in his image. And as a result of that, we carry elements of God with us. And that includes the power of our words. As images, as beings created in the image of God, our words carry a degree of that awesome creative power with us. Now, the problem for us is that unlike God, we don't just use our words for creating good, do we? We are sinful creatures. And sometimes we create tremendous destruction with our words. I mean, just stroll through the internet for 5 minutes and you will see examples of this. Go on any social media platform. Look at the comment sections of anywhere. You will see incredible amount of destruction created by words. And think about it when it comes to our political discourse. I have to be honest with you. This is exactly what I was thinking about when I heard the news of the shooting at the Trump rally yesterday. Now, I have absolutely no idea if political rhetoric had anything to do with those terrible events. But I think what I do know is that there may be, no matter what level you're at across any spectrum, there may be no more relevant example for us of the destruction of words than how we talk about those who have different political views than we do. It's incredibly destructive. Because of the nature of our words and the great power they carry, we have the opportunity to use it as God does, to create, or we can fall into the trap and allow our sinful nature to have our words cause destruction. Proverbs spends a great deal of time dealing with our tongue and talking about that kind of bifurcated nature of our tongue. So let's look at some other Proverbs here. Proverbs 12:18. "The words of the reckless are piercing like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise adorns knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. The words we use get sent out into the world and are capable of creating life or creating death. And that kind of power should be respected. Now, a while back, I went to a shooting range with my brother. He had gotten a new pistol and he wanted to test it out and he wanted me to go with him. And so when I went in there, one of the first things that strikes you as you're going through the procedures and watching the safety videos and doing all those type of things and going through the shooting is how much everything around there is designed to make it foremost in your mind that you are carrying something that is highly powerful and potentially very destructive. All the procedures, all the relevant safety protocols are there to keep in your mind that you need to be cautious and that you need to be careful because you are carrying a weapon. The problem is, I guess most of us do not view our tongues as a similarly powerful weapon. And when we don't treat them with caution and respect, the end result can be destruction and death. So let's look at how we create death with our words a little bit. Let's look at that. We allow our tongues to create death when we speak piercing words. When we speak piercing words. Do you ever know that person who, anytime there's a disagreement, is always going to bring up something from your past or going to bring up some failing that you've had previously? Or that person who knows exactly what your weak spot is and knows how to exploit it with their words. Piercing words. We create death when we speak in ignorance. I know maybe some of you have encountered this. I've encountered this in the business world. I've encountered it in churches. Someone gets relieved of their job. And many, many times, the company is legally not allowed to tell why that person was relieved of their duties. They're legally not allowed to say. But that same principle does not apply to the person who was relieved of their job. They're free to go around spreading whatever story they want. And I've seen many, many people in their ignorance speak up and cause chaos and cause destruction in the wake of that by speaking in ignorance. We create death when we speak in anger. I mean, let's face it, how many of us have not done that? How many of us have not said something awful in the heat of anger that caused hurt or caused some level of destruction? Maybe some of you grew up in an angry household where words spoken in anger were the norm. And you know better than any of us the death blow that angry words are to relationships. We speak death when we speak foolishly. I remember reading a story a while ago that there was a woman who had a really high up corporate job, and she was getting ready to travel for business to another continent. And she's sitting in the airport, and right before she goes to get on the plane, she decided to send out a little social media joke. The problem for her is it was ill-conceived and it was inappropriate. So she sends this thing off, closes her laptop, gets on the plane, gets off the plane 12 hours later. And unbeknownst to her, that little joke there went viral and spread all over the place. And by the time she landed and gotten back in touch with the world, she'd already lost her job. Speaking foolishly. We create death when we crush the spirit of others with our words. There was a time when this happened to me. I loved baseball growing up. And my last year of Little League, I had an awful, terrible coach. He didn't like kids. He didn't really want to teach. And so he was constantly, anytime you made a mistake, he was belittling you, he was downgrading you, all sorts of things like this. And this was a constant over the course of the season. And it wore me down to the point where at the end of my season, I swore off baseball and I never played another game of organized baseball again. In those moments, he crushed my spirit to play baseball. And we can do that in lots of different areas. And anytime we do any of these things, we create destruction in our lives, we create destruction in our relationships, and it comes with a kind of death. Does any of it hit home for you? Have you seen this play out in your own story? Words spoken to you. Words you've said to somebody else. I know when I was doing this message, I had to think through it myself. Like, where have I been guilty of this? Where have I not been great and been spreading words of destruction? And I came up with a few things. As a very big sports fan, I like to have running commentary on whatever event I happen to be watching. And usually it has to do with critiques of my teams and when they're playing terrible. And I put that stuff out there on a regular basis. That's not helpful. That's not creating life. I also can have a tendency to be overly critical. Because I have an attention to detail, because my eye draws towards things, and I'm constantly looking to learn from anything everywhere. I've trained this in myself, but the downside is that I can regularly get caught up in thinking the negative about other people, other places, other things. And there are times when I can be overly critical and overly negative, speaking words about myself too. So where do you have the tendency to bring destruction to your life or the life of those around you? Are the people in the range of your words starting to look a little bit like one of those wilted plants from the IKEA kits? So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with it? How do we find ways not to speak words of death? Well, let's keep with our plant theme here. I want us to treat our words and the potential of our words a little bit like a cactus. Now, a cactus is prickly. Anytime you're around a cactus, there's always danger of being stung by it. We avoid touching them whenever we can. And a cactus is great in the desert because a little bit of water goes a really long way. Now, one of the primary ways that we can prevent ourselves from speaking words of death is simply by not speaking. By not speaking whatsoever. And this is precisely what Proverbs has to say about this. In Proverbs 10:19, it says this: "Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. Whoever derides their neighbor has no sense, but the one who has understanding holds their tongue." So what we need to do is we need to approach our words like we would approach a cactus, with great caution, knowing that at any moment we might get pricked. And it's very difficult to learn how to not say something. And if we must speak in a particular moment, again, think about the cactus. Like a little bit of water goes a long way. Just a few words go a long way in those moments. So how do we learn how to do this? How do we learn how to not speak words of death? How do we learn to keep our mouth closed? Well, one of the things we have to do is we have to, first of all, understand when we are tempted to speak words of death. When are you tempted? Maybe it's when you're angry. Maybe it's when you're tired. Maybe when you're hungry or when you've experienced hurt. In those moments, we have to practice not saying things that are negative. There's a great example of this. One of my favorite exhibits I saw one time was letters from Abraham Lincoln. Now, if you're familiar with Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War, all of his generals were mostly horrible. And they did a horrible job, and they never did what he wanted them to do. And there's a series of letters that he wrote to one of his generals. And one of them is a very, very angry, irate, frustrated Abraham Lincoln. And then the next letter is a little bit later. Still frustrated, still angry, but the words are toned down a little bit. The third one is a little bit less angry, a little bit frustrated. The words are significantly more measured. I think there's like 4 of these things, and each one gets progressively less irate, and the words get progressively more direct and succinct. And here's the thing. There's no evidence that he sent any of these letters at all. Now, in the internet age, the barrier between us getting our words out is significantly smaller than Abraham Lincoln writing letters to his generals. But one of the things we have to realize is before we say something, the key principle here is wait. Wait. Before you press send, before you send that email, before you send that message, before you post that, wait. What is this? Is this necessary? Am I doing this out of anger, frustration, hurt? Do I need to send this? Is it necessary? Now, sometimes you can't just say nothing. If you're in the middle of a discussion with your spouse, for instance, saying nothing probably is not going to be helpful. So when you're in these moments, how do you say something but not go too far with it? Well, here's a couple tricks for you. Just a couple phrases. You can say something like, I am too angry and emotional right now to be able to give you a proper answer. Can we talk about this like tomorrow morning instead? Or can I get back to you soon about this? Find words, small amount of words, not a lot, to be able to say to help you. And lastly, don't underestimate prayer in this instance. It's perfectly okay to pray, God, help me not say anything stupid right now and keep my mouth shut. That is a perfectly appropriate prayer. So how do we look at it the other way? How do we've prevented words from raining destruction? Well, how do we create life with our words? How is that possible? Let's look at the other side of the coin. What does it look like to create life with our words? Proverbs, again, gives us a number of clues here. The soothing tongue is a tree of life. Gracious words are like honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. I love that imagery right there. The tongue of the wise brings healing. When we use our tongues to create life, we do this when we encourage other people. Think about the last time you received really encouraging words from somebody else. Maybe it was after you tried something new, or maybe someone saw that you were struggling, or maybe you did something really, really well, and someone came alongside of you, encouraged you, and breathed life into you in those moments. We breathe life into other people. We spread life when we are gracious with our words. I remember in college, I was writing a term paper, and, like a dumb college kid, I stayed up half the night writing this thing on the day before it was due. Saved it on a 3.5-inch floppy disk, because yes, I am that old, and took this 3.5-inch floppy disk to the computer lab the following morning right before class because I didn't have a printer, printed it out, got the printout, and what I was looking at was a whole bunch of weird symbols. The disk got corrupted overnight, and I lost my entire paper. And so I knew I had to go into class with basically the excuse of my dog ate my homework. And I'm like, she's never going to believe me. I'm going to get a terrible grade on this paper. I'm going to fail this class. It's going to be this. I was in like doom mode in my mind. So I walk up to the professor, and I explain to her what happened. And she looked at me and says, you know what? Happens to all of us. Happens to all of us. Just turn it in tomorrow. I can tell you in that moment, life was breathed back into me. And that's what happens when we speak gracious words. And the same thing happens when we speak words of healing. When we say things like, you're forgiven. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Or, thank you for sharing that. That must have been really brave to do. And we breathe words of life into other people when we call things out, call good things out in their lives. One of my favorite authors is John Acuff. And he is a famous author. He's written over 10 books, spoke at over 350 companies, New York Times bestseller. And regularly, on a consistent basis, he credits a middle school English teacher for telling him, John, I think you'd be a good writer. I think you'd be a good writer. And it changed the course of his life as a result. We speak words of life when we call good things out in other people when we see them. Where are you good at this? What aspects of your life are you good at using words for creating life? And which ones do you struggle with? How do we do this? How do we do this in a better way? Well, unlike creating death and destruction with our words, creating life doesn't just happen accidentally. It has to be done intentionally. Now, on the front porch of our house, we had a flower, not this flower, a different flower. And we were not very good at watering this flower. So we'd come back to the house after a few days and all the flowers would just be drooped over. So we'd give it a little bit more water. They would perk back up. And then a few days later, droop again. We'd give them a little bit of water. They'd perk back up and then droop again. And this just went on and on and on till one moment they drooped over and they never came back again. Flowers are delicate. Flowers need careful attention. They need intentional care. They need watering on a regular basis. If we don't, they're going to wilt. If we're not careful, we can leave the people around us relationally parched and thirsty because we deprive them of our words. And I know this has been the case for me. This has been one of the areas where I feel like I've failed personally. I have withheld praise and compliments, not intentionally, but I've done that. I'm not always gracious with the words that I speak. And I can tell you, I have done a bad job of being thankful for the everyday and the mundane things that happen around me. Do you struggle with giving words of life to other people around you, maybe even to yourself? Some of our relationships today, if we were to think about them, some of our relationships are dry and thirsty. They've wilted. They can't grow. We've choked the life out of them. But here's the thing. We have a chance to bring them back. We have a chance to bring them back with our words. How do we do that? Like a flower, we need to be intentional about it. We need to water them regularly. We need to use our words. How do we do that? Here's a couple of suggestions. Notice people doing something right. Notice somebody who's doing something right, and then say something about it. Notice somebody who needs encouragement. Pay attention to those around you. Is there someone around you who needs encouragement? Be the one to encourage them. Express thanks for the everyday. This is really important around your house. Is there something that gets done around your house regularly that you don't do? Be thankful for it. Express your thanks for that getting done regularly. Another suggestion, don't be afraid of I'm sorry. Don't be afraid of I'm sorry. It's amazing the life that can give a relationship when people just admit that they're wrong. We have such an incredible opportunity in our current world to be life givers. Many, many people are walking around and they are thirsty and they are wilted. They are desperate for any kind of level of encouragement or support, to have somebody who believes in them. We can be those people. But it's going to take harder work than speaking words of instruction. It's going to take much more effort and a little bit of humility on our part. But the better you are at this, the better we are at this, the more life we'll bring to our families, the more life we will bring into our community, the more life we will bring into our church. And hopefully, if we're really good at it, the world around us. We need to lean into the life-giving words so that we can create that life all around us. So we need to understand that our words have incredible power. They have the power of life and death. And the story of our lives may very well be told by which set of words we use. If you'd like to respond today, on your connection card, there's a couple things you can work on. Maybe for you, you really need to work on stopping creating words of death coming out of your mouth. Maybe you need to work on holding in your tongue. There's an opportunity to check that off, and we'll be praying for you this week. Or maybe for you, you want to be on the positive side. You really want to work on being better at creating words of life around you. You have an opportunity to check that off, and we'll be praying for you as well. Maybe you're like, I need to work on this whole thing. I will check off both of these things, and we'll go from there. I'd love to be praying for you this week as you work on this. What is the story that your words are telling? Is it a story of life, or is it a story of death?
Thanks again for listening. Any step you take towards Jesus is a step in the right direction. You can find out more about us at crbic.org. That's crbic.org.